When you reflect upon the last few years, what do you think will be the greatest achievement with the US Australian alliance?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I am preparing to depart from Australia, I've been thinking about this quite a lot over the last 3 years. And I feel like it's really been a milestone period for the Alliance. I mean, the Alliance has been important and really the base of a lot of what both the U.S. and Australia do globally for decades now. But I think the last 3 years have been particularly watershed. And of course, there are the things in the headlines that everybody hears about, AUKUS and different pieces, but it actually goes way beyond that. I mean, I think at a period of time where there's more uncertainty globally, alliances and friendships are even more important, particularly as we look at things like what is the economy in 20 years, what does that look like? How do we do innovation together? How do we tag team what we have our strengths in across the alliance? And I think those are some of the things that are really going to be a highlight from the last 3 years. We look at things like supply chain resiliency, how we can work across allies and partners to do that, and how we actually strengthen those relationships, not just between the U.S. and Australia, but the Five Eyes, across the Indo-Pacific. We're doing more and more U.S., Australia, Japan, the Quad. We just had a fabulous Quad foreign ministers meeting in New Delhi. So I think what we'll really look back on this period and reflect on is all of the new connections that we've made that make both of our countries stronger, more prosperous, and safer.
So you've obviously worked in so many different countries around the world. What do you find unique about the way that Australians engage in public issues?
Sure. I mean, it might be a little bit cliche to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is the Australians just have a really laid-back way of looking at a lot of things. And I think it speaks a lot to the nature of the culture, but I think it also changes the context in which you have the conversation. You know, there are some places where I have served where protocol is really, really essential. You make a protocol mistake, and all of a sudden you find yourself on your back foot when it comes to negotiating. The thing about Australia, and particularly about Australians and Americans, we have so much in common, that there's just that easy kind of conversation that can happen between us. So I think that's one thing. Another thing that I've really appreciated learning while I've been here is about the differences and the similarities in our public systems. In a lot of ways, we have a lot of similarities, but the difference in your Commonwealth structure versus our federal structure, the role that states and territories play, what that looks like in terms of making policy and strategy, and where the differences and the similarities are between our two countries, has also been really an interesting thing for me.
Australia and the US are often described not just as allies but as genuine friends. From a diplomatic perspective, what do you think separates a strategic partnership from a true friendship between countries?
It's a great question, and I think fundamentally what it is it's the relationship between people. I think there's in foreign relations there's all kinds of different alliances, partnerships, times when countries come together to work in the same direction. But I think what makes the U.S.-Australia relationship really special is that goes down to every level of society. I feel like every Australian I've met has some connection with the U.S. Friends, family, has spent time there, and a remarkable number of Americans do as well. And that's a story that we've been telling for decades. And if you go back in history, particularly during World War II, and some of the things that we did together, I think really created the framework. It's really those dark days of World War II that led into the ANZUS Treaty. And I think the idea behind ANZUS was really, how do you go beyond just an alliance and take all that we did together during World War II and make it the basis of a long-lasting friendship. And we've really seen that. And whether it's the number of Australian students studying in the U.S., the number of American students who come here on study abroad or to do the work travel program, Programs like our Youth Advisory Council, right? You're now part of that program, that friendship as well. And it's those layers on top of each other over time that I think really make the difference.
Now, in your opinion, do you think that there are many emerging areas for collaboration between the United States and Australia?
Absolutely. I think the future of technology is a space that already we have proven our ability to work together to make our innovation stronger on both sides. I mean, whether that's in healthcare and the work that's been done in vaccines and advancing healthcare, whether that's in innovation and tech, a lot of which we're still seeing emerge in the AI space, also quantum, which will be really a game changer. One of the things that I've seen during these 3 years is really how much we kind of tag team back and forth. So the number of companies that I've seen Australian experts have formed, they've taken to the United States, they've scaled up, they've attracted investment, they've built out, they've come back to Australia, and then they continue to work back and forth across both economies. And I think what you have in Australia is an ecosystem with a smaller population where it's a really great place to incubate ideas. And then in the US, we can really scale it up, and then we can kind of take it to the world. So I think there's a lot of places where we're going to see more of that. I mean, another thing that we hear a lot about is critical minerals and how important those are, not just in the context of defense, but also the future of energy. Every smart device that we carry around needs that. And our ability to work together to innovate how you process, make it cleaner, make it quicker, ensure the supply chain and the resiliency of that supply chain, those are things that we're doing better because we're doing them together.
Up until David Bright's recent nomination, Australia has been without a US ambassador for the last 15 months. Do you think that the lack of a US ambassador signals that the current US administration doesn't value its alliance with Australia?
Absolutely not. What that speaks to is the uniqueness of our system. And it's very different from the way that Australia's system works. If you notice, former Ambassador Kevin Rudd stepped down, and Australia had a new ambassador that was approved within a couple of weeks. That's because in the Australian system, it really is an internal within government decision. Part of the uniqueness of our system is that built into the balance of power, the legislative branch has the authority and actually does the job of confirming ambassadors. So the White House, the president can nominate someone, but it's only the Senate that can confirm them. That can sometimes be a longer process than we would like, but absolutely not. It doesn't indicate that in any way. And I think we have plenty of examples of that. Of course, a prime one being the meeting between Prime Minister Albanese and President Trump in the White House in November. Just yesterday, the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting in New Delhi. I mean, the fact that Secretary Rubio's very first meeting within hours of being sworn into office was with the Quad Foreign Ministers and a bilat with Foreign Minister Wong, I think just shows how important that relationship is and how much we value it.
What have young Australians taught you during your time in Australia?
Oh, it's a great question. I think one thing that young Australians have taught me is to look beyond the headlines. And I think this is more important, as we were talking about a little earlier. I think this is so important right now when it's about how do you clickbait, how do you get people to look at your stories, how do you dig deeper? And that's one thing I think definitely about our Youth Advisory Council is it creates an opportunity. And I've really, really appreciated getting honest feedback and having really honest conversations with Australian young people. I think that Australian young people they look at things with a critical eye. And it's really been fun to be able to have debates and difficult discussions, right? I mean, I think that's one thing among friends and allies is you've got to be able to have conversations and ask each other hard questions. And so that's been something I've really appreciated.
If you wanted a young person to know one thing about the bilateral relationship between the US and Australia, what would it be?
I think it would be, don't just go on what you read in the headlines. Look at what's actually happening in the relationship, dig into it, read the history of it. It's really special. And I would like to encourage Australian young people to embrace being stewards of the alliance going forward. Because part of what, as I said earlier, part of what really makes it strong is the people, and those people-to-people ties. So dig into it, engage with it, become part of it, and that's how we'll continue to ensure that it not only remains relevant and strong, but it becomes even more with each passing year.
Now, young people are obviously growing up in a world with increasingly different geopolitical competition, technological change, just in a world that is increasingly more confusing to them. What kind of skills do you think the young people should be learning to be able to deal with future challenges?
That's a great question, and particularly as we are at really the front edge of AI. This question of how do you harness AI to help make us smarter and not lean into it so much that we actually all become dumber, right? And so I think one thing that I would say is use the technology that you've got available to you, but do the research, right? Like don't just, it's so easy to drop something into your favorite chat and get an answer, but ask the questions of, is that answer correct? Read, like that's something I feel that we've just started to lose as a society, and you can learn so much by reading. Stay on top of what people are putting out in whatever your area of interest is, because that helps you harness the technologies that are out there even better and use them as a tool instead of as what's guiding the conversation. So I think that's one thing that I would point to. I think just also question, right? Always question, ask why, and don't do something just because that's the way it's always been done, or that's the way your friend is doing it, because I think that's the direction that our world is going in. Those who ask the questions, who push the innovation, are going to be those who define what the future looks like.
How do you think young people can play a role in shaping the future of international relationships and diplomacy?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just take the opportunities that come to you. Lean into them, take a seat at the table, let your voice be heard. One thing with where we are in technology is there's so many different ways to actually create a platform and to create a conversation. So make sure your voice is out there. I know it can be really hard, especially when you're first starting out, to feel like, you ask, do I actually have anything to contribute to this conversation? Be confident in yourself, do your research, know your stuff, but then let your voice be heard. And ask the questions, and ask the questions to power. Why are things working the way they are? Why aren't we looking at doing things differently? I think that's a really important way that young people can play a role in guiding diplomacy and international relations.
Now, for young women interested in leadership positions and in diplomacy and international relations, what's your advice when it comes to seeking opportunities and navigating spaces confidently?
I mean, first of all, believe in yourself. Women in particular, especially younger women, I think it's really hard. We kind of come at things more from I want to be a gatherer and learn as much as I can. There's always somebody who I think knows more than me and is smarter than me, so I'm going to stand back and listen. And there's a lot to be said about that in terms of how you gather knowledge. But you also have to step forward and take the seat at the table and not wait for someone to give it to you. A lot of my career, I've been the only woman in the room. And you have to just start trusting yourself, trusting your voice, and then taking that space, because that I think that's the way that you get more opportunities, more experience. Let your voice be heard. Also, rely on your networks. Really focus on building networks, and then bring people with you. Find those people who can help you, not just advance in what it is you want to do, but to learn more and to become stronger in your chosen path, and then take others with you. because that really makes a difference.
So what do you wish you knew before coming to Australia?
I wish I knew the correct way to eat Vegemite, which I actually think is in Shapes crackers. I've decided that is the best way. The Shapes Vegemite are delicious. But seriously, one thing maybe that has surprised me since I've been here is that Australians consume American media as if it's domestic, but without the context that goes around it. And particularly in an age where it is all about the clickbait, it's getting people to read the stories, that it's really tough to be able to differentiate, I think, between what is actual and what is really something that's been spun up or hyped up to attract readership. And that's why I think exchanges are so important. Programs like the Youth Advisory Council are so important because they're opportunities to actually see things the way they are on the ground, not the way that they're being portrayed, and shaping the way you think.
What's the best place that you visited in Australia?
Oh man, that's such a hard question because if I answer that, there's no way that I don't offend somebody. But maybe I could talk about what are some of the most memorable experiences that I have. I'm an enormous sports fan, and I think that probably the two countries that have the most likely claim to the biggest sports fans in the world are Americans and Australians. It was so special to be at the Australian Open when Madison Keys won for the first time. And she'd been somebody who'd been on the professional tennis circuit for a really long time and had never won a Grand Slam. And that was really special to be part of that. Within really a week of arriving here in 2023, I got to go represent the U.S. at the Sweden U.S. women's soccer match in Melbourne. As part of the World Cup, and that was also amazing. I feel so lucky that I've had so many great opportunities here. I've really gotten to see the country. So those are a couple that really stand out to me. Having the women's national softball team here up in Brisbane, having the women's rugby team come and play, all of that has just been really special to lean into.
What Australian food or drink will you miss the most when you go back?
Well, definitely the flat white. Though we're lucky. I mean, I think there are a lot of flat whites you can get in the U.S. now, and there's some Australian coffee chains. But I'm from Washington State originally, and one of my very first jobs out of university was importing coffee beans for gourmet coffee roasters in the United States. And so I'm a bit of a coffee snob, and I will say that flat whites are fabulous. I just love also the fresh nature of all the fruit and vegetables. It reminds me a lot of home. So I'll definitely miss that. I have to be honest, I will not miss Vegemite.
So what has been your most unique or even strangest experience while you've been in Australia?
Well, I've gotten to spend some time in some of the hinterland, definitely in the Northern Territories. Had a chance to see some of the crocodiles. Those are unbelievable. One of my favorite photos I sent home to family was actually watching the sunset up in Darwin. And the beautiful ocean, and then there's a nice little sign that essentially says, "Don't swim here, everything in this water wants to kill you." So that absolutely, that is unique. I mean, I think also, we talked about AUKUS, being able to be on a nuclear submarine in Darwin that was sailed in, I'm sorry, not in Darwin, in Perth, that was sailed in by an Australian sailor that had trained up together with the United States. Being able to do that with the Prime Minister and talk about kind of the future of what the maritime force is going to look like in Australia was also a really special experience. And then I also have to say, it's been such a fabulous place for my family. And just to be able to watch them make Australian friends, be able to play their sports, and do the things that they love here, I think Australia is always going to have a really special place in the heart of my whole family.
So good